Mum, this tastes different. Did you put anything different in it?
I put a bit of
Iconic Arms Season 1.
It's expensive, too heavy, and almost entirely impractical. The Desert Eagle isn't a very good handgun, but nonetheless, it is remarkably popular. It features in hundreds of movies, television shows, and video games. So how did such an unwieldy weapon become so iconic? Why is the Deagle a trademark of many first-person shooters? And is bigger always better? The Desert Eagle was designed as a semi-automatic rival to large-frame, high-caliber revolvers. A gas-operated pistol able to feed from interchangeable magazines and with superior capacity to a typical 6-round cylinder. Design started in 1979 at American co. Magnum Research Incorporated, with the first finished pistols produced in 1982 by Israeli weapons manufacturer IMI. The latest iteration, the Mark 19, emerged in 1995, and like some kind of fashion accessory, even comes with a number of choices as far as finish is concerned. Amongst them, the most demure is plain black. Others include 3 chromed options of various lusters, nickel, either satin or bright, and gold, both 24 karat and in a more durable titanium variant. And if either gold finish isn't suitably ostentatious, then there's always the tiger stripes. There are also more practical options, such as the choice of either a 6-inch or 10-inch barrel, and your caliber preference, either .357 Magnum, .44 Magnum, or .50 Action Express. The latter cartridge was designed specifically for high-caliber semi-automatic pistols, and indeed the Desert Eagle was the first handgun chambered for it. A performance jump from the already mighty .44 Magnum round, and right on the cusp of calibers deemed legal. The 50 cal chambering set the pistol above most other Magnum options, which in turn has led to it finding popularity in action films since the 1980s, supplanting Dirty Harry's .44 Magnum as the most powerful handgun in the world. For almost as long as video games have existed, they have been influenced by cinema. While the firearms in early games were often made generic through lack of resolution, as the number of polygons possible to push on screen grew, weapons were able to be rendered in even greater detail, giving rise to games with realistically rendered arsenals. However, due to concerns over the use of trademarks, the real Steel Desert Eagle's name hasn't always matched its in-game appellation. Sometimes it's known by generic terms that allude to its higher caliber, the Magnum pistol, heavy handgun, or 50 AE, offering a clue as to the handgun's power. Sometimes the name is a mite more imaginative, and while the Silver Talon in Soldier of Fortune, Desert Ranger in Tomb Raider, or Counter-Strike's Nighthawk 50 cal might not be instantly recognizable by name, the imposing silhouette of the Deagle is unmistakable. Counter-Strike in 1999 was one of the earliest realistic depictions of the gun. The game was originally a mod for Half-Life and eventually graduated to a full retail release. The weapon's digital rendition mirrors the real Steel's power. While magazine capacity was limited, its high damage and one-shot headshot potential more than made up for any shortcoming. The game graciously overlooks the weapon's impracticality for combat use, with the weapon eventually becoming a fast favourite for use in tandem with a primary weapon. The powerful pistol returned in Counter-Strike Source, and once again more recently in Global Offensive, each time filling a similar high-powered backup role. Stylish, powerful, and capable of skillful headshot kills, the Counter-Strike depiction is a definitive one, with the game enjoying huge popularity over its lifespan, particularly in a world before Call of Duty Modern Warfare. In the opening scenes of COD 4, the Desert Eagle is very prominent. As a deposed president, you're bundled into a car, given a none-too-gentle butt stroke, frog-marched to a pillory, and then, after some posturing, shot in the head by the golden high-caliber pistol. It's fatal punctuation for a coup d'etat, a show of force in public execution, and that is what the Desert Eagle is all about. Exhibition, a vulgar display of power. It's a compelling moment, and the Desert Eagle is the totem of such potential, setting the story in motion in an explosive fashion. It's not until the very end of the campaign that the pistol makes a return, this time as a grim portent of doom. executing a squad mate, are moving towards your position with similar intent, only diverted by a timely distraction and some quick thinking by Price. The later installments weren't afraid to see the Desert Eagle's reprise in its pivotal role. Modern Warfare 2 sees the pistol crop up in a few instances, notably in the hands of Brazilian arms dealer Rojas' assistant in the first of the favela missions. Modern Warfare 3 sees even more liberal use of the high-caliber option. Protagonist Yuri uses it as his default sidearm, and you find yourself staring down its barrel in one pivotal scene with Price. The iconic weapon reappears at the climax of Modern Warfare 3's campaign too, with Makarov mirroring the down-the-barrel viewpoint with Price, and then subsequently executing poor Yuri after his heroic intervention. It seems like every do-or-die moment in the Modern Warfare series simply must include the weapon. But I suppose if you're going to threaten the player with a gun to the face, there are few weapons with as imposing a profile as a .50 caliber Desert Eagle. Between its depiction in cinema and video games, the Desert Eagle has established quite a reputation. And when it comes to imposing presence and high-caliber action, there are few handheld weapons that can compare. Its one-upmanship in power and capacity over Magnum revolvers, and a commanding on-screen presence, have cemented its place in popular culture. Its cinematic influence bled into video games, where its virtual representation reflects the real steel weapon and the lust for power of those who wield it. Unrestrained exhibition, terrifying potency. And who cares about practicality when you've got a golden gun that shoots giant bullets? Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, farewell. What could be more iconic than the Kalashnikov? Rough-hewn from wood and iron, its simple construction belies an enduring example of industrial design. It's the weapon of choice for a revolution, and the backbone of any insurgency. So, what makes the AK so special? Why is a near 70-year-old rifle still so popular? And is there really no substitute? The legendary rifle's story starts in Soviet Russia, in the embers of World War II. This was an era of rapid technological progress amidst valiant acts, and the Soviet Union loved a hero. Mikhail Kalashnikov was a tanker in the Red Army, wounded in action in 1941. During his recuperation, he learned of his comrades' woes with their issued rifles, and resolved to tackle them with a soldier-focused approach to small arms design, with innate usability born from simplicity and reliable function. His early designs caught the eye of officials, and Kalashnikov found himself part of a small arms development group for the Red Army. The Soviets were not shy to take influence from what other forces were fielding, and between captured Nazi weapons, Allied supplies, and a long line of Russian prototypes, the AK-47 began to take shape. The German Sturmgewehr 44 was a major influence. With similar form factor, it proved the viability of a mid-power cartridge, and provided the gas system for Kalashnikov's design. The earlier RPD would also lend its intermediate cartridge to the AK-47, the 7.62 by 39mm round, also known as the M43. Its slightly tapered casing is responsible for giving the AK-47 its distinctive curved magazine. In demonstrations, the 1947 prototype outperformed any rival, and was readily adopted by the Russians, although initial manufacturing issues did slow down deployment. These issues were remedied by 1959, when a modernized version was introduced, known as the AKM. It replaced the milled receiver with a stamped metal one, both lighter and easier to produce, and was also equipped with a muzzle brake to improve the accuracy of automatic fire. There were a large number of variants of this basic design, from the AKS with a folding stock, to a large number of foreign-produced AK pattern rifles, such as the Chinese Type 56, Hungarian AMD 65, or the Finnish RK 62. The smaller caliber AK-74 emerged in 1974, firing the lighter but higher velocity 5.45 by 39mm round. With greater wounding potential versus the older round, the AK-74 would supplement and eventually replace the AKM in service. Pair these variants with such a broad service history, and you have a recipe for a very popular weapon indeed. There have been more Kalashnikov pattern rifles made than all other assault rifles combined. In fact, of all the small arms that exist, 1 in 5 is an AK. It's utterly ubiquitous, found in every corner of the globe, and such is its influence, it even adorns the flag of Mozambique. No surprise then that the AK-47 is as popular in video games as it is in real life, with perhaps as many digital renditions as those stamped from steel. It's so well known that most instances, regardless of variant, are labelled as the AK-47 without fear of license rights. Only the most cautious opt to use SADS appellations, such as GoldenEye's KF-7 Soviet, or the CV-47 in earlier Counter-Strike games. These virtual depictions reflect the rifle's design in a variety of ways, but there's no mistaking the familiar characteristics of the AK. Often, a weapon's identity is forged by the powers that wield it, and with its prominent use by the Second World during the Cold War, the AK has come to symbolize the defiance and might of those who would oppose the West. It's the foil to the American M16, and the weapon of choice for any opposing force. And for that reason, it's often the default option for the bad guys in games that mirror any recent conflict. In some cases, like in Counter-Strike, the AK is only available to the terrorist forces. And here it has prime placement, being the top-tier automatic weapon on offer, alongside the counter-terrorist's M4. Perhaps it's by its association with untrained militia fighters, or just affinity by design. But long bursts of automatic fire, spray and pray, seems like a natural fit for the AK. It has perfectly good accuracy, and is more than capable of hitting targets within its effective range. But somehow, the AK doesn't feel like a marksman's rifle. Luckily, the weapon is quite suited to sustain fire, and this is normally reflected within its depiction. The AK's rate of fire is fairly moderate, and while recoil is present, it's still possible to rest the weapon onto a close-range target. It's not particularly elegant, nor great for ammo conservation, but you've got 30 chances to hit something, even if it's not what you were aiming at. Of course, it's not just enough to be capable of automatic fire. A weapon must also be able to dole out magazine after magazine without stoppage or fuss. Luckily, the AK's reliability is legendary. With loose tolerances and as simple a mechanism as possible, there's not too much that can go wrong, and even less that can't be put right. This is one trait that doesn't transfer well to video games. Malfunctions are seldom shown, as firearm maintenance isn't a particularly exciting endeavour, and experiencing a feed failure mid-firefight would only prove frustrating. Some games do reflect these factors, however, perhaps most notably Far Cry 2, with scavenged weapons proving much less reliable than those bought brand new. Weapon condition is also a factor in some RPGs, such as in Fallout 3, but a poorly kept weapon suffers only in the damage stakes rather than with any interruption. It's this reliability and simplicity that gives the weapon much of its charm. Other weapons might be more high-tech, but that does you no good if it chokes in dusty environments. It seems almost sacrilegious to tamper with the purity of the AK. Strapping anything superfluous to the weapon is an insult to the design principles of Kalashnikov. Some games do let you customize your AK-47 with a variety of attachments. Optics, suppressors, and garish paint jobs. Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare had the right idea, as equipping a red dot sight would harm the AK-47's long-range damage, meaning the most sensible choice was just a plain rifle with iron sights. Remember, just because you can, doesn't mean you should. Of course, if you're some tin pot dictator of some far-flung land, you can generally do whatever you like. And this extends to having your favourite rifle gold-plated. Although such weapons are ornamental and clearly not designed for the rigours of battle, some games do feature golden guns. Some represent the pinnacle of accomplishment with the weapon, a reward for the completion of challenges, while others just represent an absence of good taste. So, the AK-47, the very best there is. From drug lords to peasant rebellions, the AK is everyone's favourite weapon. A great equaliser, irrespective of wealth or status. It's not the most accurate weapon, nor the most elegant, but it simply doesn't have to be. It's good enough. It excels where fighters need it most. It's reliable. Stoppages are rare, and any faults that do occur can probably be fixed with a hammer. It's simple to use. There's no need to pore over a manual. The AK is point and shoot. It's so simple a child could use it. And in some parts of the world, they often do. It's cheap, easy to manufacture, and even easier to acquire. If you're looking to arm an insurrection on a budget, no other rifle will come close. It is an old weapon, but it's not yet outdated. At the end of World War II, it was cutting edge, and led the way for the rise of the assault rifle during the 20th century. Today, although not quite as high-tech as some infantry weapons, the AK-47 still performs its duty. And with 100 million rifles in existence, its popularity is unlikely to evaporate anytime soon. With its widespread use and low cost, the weapon can be counted alongside the most basic of tools. The hammer, the sickle, the AK-47. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, farewell. A good sniper is terrifying. Hidden death that lurks in a hillside, unseen and able to precisely quench targets with a single bullet. If you're lucky, such a threat will only send a chill down your spine, and if you're not, well, you might never hear the shot. The Arctic Warfare series of rifles are purpose-built for precision. It has found fame through its confirmed kill distance records and in its depiction in games, most notably as Counter-Strike's AWP. So what place do precision weapons have in games? What makes sniper rifles such a desirable choice for some players? And what is it about bolt actions that makes them deal more damage? The Arctic Warfare's story starts in England in 1978. At this time, the British Army were reliant on the 19th century Lee Enfield rifles for their marksman roles, designated the L42A1. While there's nothing wrong with a classic bolt action, there was definitely room for a more modern, specialised long-range weapon. Accuracy International was founded by a group of skilled competitive shooters, looking to design and build a new tactical rifle. Their first design was the Precision Marksman, or the PM, in 1982. It was designed in response to the British Army's search for a new sniper rifle, and would emerge triumphant in competition, earning the L96A1 designation. Built for precision from the ground up, the platform is bedded on a solid aluminium chassis, surrounded by a distinctive drab-green hollow polymer stock. Not content with a single contract, AI shot for the Swedish military, who were in a similar position to the Brits, seeking to replace their World War II-era rifles. The Precision Marksman design was modified to cope with extremely cold temperatures, with a milled bolt that minimised the surface area able to freeze together, and a larger trigger guard to allow the use of heavy gloves. These changes gave the updated rifle a new name: the Arctic Warfare. It was accepted into service by the Swedes in 1991 as the PSG-90, and the British Army adopted the improved version as the L118A1. Later variants of the Arctic Warfare include the AWF with folding stock, and the AWP or AWP, intended for law enforcement use with plain black furniture. The AWS is a suppressed version with an integral suppressor, and similar is the AW Covert, which comes with a shortened barrel and folding stock. The AW Magnum expanded the caliber offerings to a higher power band, with chamberings in 300 Win Mag and 338 Lapua Magnum. These rounds deliver more kinetic energy on target, extending the rifle's reach and flattening the bullet's trajectory. This makes the Magnum offerings particularly suitable for extreme ranges, and the AWM was adopted by the British Armed Forces under the L115 designation. It was this variant that would catapult the Arctic warfare into the record books, as the AWM is responsible for the longest ever confirmed sniper kill, at 2,475 meters. The shot took place in 2009 during the war in Afghanistan, fired by British sniper Craig Harrison, Corporal of Horse in the Blues and Royals Royal Horse Guards. An incredible feat that placed the platform amongst the finest long-range rifles. No doubt, the Arctic warfare is every inch a marksman's weapon. It was never meant to be cheap, nor intended for mass production. These rifles are specialist weapons for a specialized role. Perhaps it's this boutique appeal that has led to the familiar green thumbhole stock cropping up in a number of video games. Such weapons have always had a tough transition into interactive entertainment. Truly realistic sniping is a test of patience and precision, engaging unseen and far from the fray. Games normally take some liberties for the sake of balance, and so, virtual sniping usually takes place at closer ranges and at a faster pace than reality. Some titles do pride themselves on wide-open maps, the Battlefield franchise for instance, but most FPS insist on cramming you and your rifle into a small arena surrounded by automatic weapons. They are still top of the tree when it comes to range damage and precision, so while you might not have a spotter at your side, you can still vex the opposition from across the map. There's a curious trait shared by all bolt-action weapons in games. They all seem to do more damage than their semi-automatic counterparts, even if they're of the same caliber. Counter-Strike's AWP is top dog in terms of damage, and is the only weapon to kill an opponent in a single hit at any distance, anywhere above the legs, armored or not. It's this depiction that cemented the Arctic warfare's iconic status. The Counter-Strike AWP is a legendary weapon, and certainly amongst the most recognizable weapons of first-person shooters. This popularity in Counter-Strike has led to its appearance in other titles. But no matter the game, the rifle is always amongst the most deadly on offer. This is certainly true within the Call of Duty series, with the Arctic warfare rifles appearing as the L96 in Black Ops, the L118A in Modern Warfare 3, and the L115 in Call of Duty Ghosts. So, why is the rifle always so powerful? It's not for the sake of realism, but instead a question of balance. While you can empty a semi-automatic weapon's magazine within a couple of seconds, a bolt-action weapon must be manually cycled for every shot, which means a drastically slower rate of fire. The high damage of such weapons is necessary to keep them relevant then, and as a side effect, this places a much stronger emphasis on first-shot precision. Luckily, you'll most often find the Arctic warfare supplied with a scope by default. A highly magnified view proves a double-edged sword, however, and can help to further reinforce the intended long-range role of the weapon. Often, your peripheral vision will be blocked out entirely while aiming, and while some games, such as Call of Duty Ghosts, offer a dual-rendered view, you will still suffer in the reactivity stakes. A closer view helps when tackling distant targets, but a narrower field of vision can blind you to closer threats, and readjusting your sights to an unexpected angle can take critical time. This tunnel vision, paired with an intrinsically slow rate of fire, generally makes the weapon ill-suited for close-quarters battle. But of course, there are still some who'll try. The Arctic Warfare series might be known by many names, but there's no mistaking its uncompromised performance. It demands first-shot precision and severely punishes wayward shots. But if you want to freeze out the opposition, this rifle is ice cold. A refined weapon of precision that is deadly in every incarnation. Its power compels a cult-like following. Those who live for the thrill of a one-shot kill. It's seldom the easy option. Its potency reined in with slow output and exacting function. The Arctic Warfare. Record holder. Purpose-built. Powerhouse. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, farewell. Pistols do not win wars, but they save the lives of the men who do. A handgun cannot match the accuracy or range of a rifle, but can prove a valuable substitute in the absence of one. The Beretta 92, also known as the M9, is a definitive 9mm pistol, both in service and on the silver screen. So how did an Italian pistol end up replacing an American classic? Why is it a staple weapon in action films? And which is better, 9mm or 45 ACP? Founded in 1526, Italian Co. Beretta is the oldest active firearms manufacturer in the world. Gunsmith Maestro Bartolomeo Beretta made his name producing arquebus barrels for the Arsenal of Venice, and the company still exists today in a similar line of business. They were tasked with supplying the Italian army with weapons during both world wars, but perhaps their best-known product today is a semi-automatic pistol design, first devised in 1975. The Beretta 92 was a development of earlier Beretta pistols, such as the M1922 and M1951, with the latter lending much to the 92's exterior styling, and the German Walther P38 providing the locking system for the barrel. In the middle of the 20th century, most American police forces were reliant on classic revolvers, chambered in .38 Special or the more powerful .357 Magnum. While familiar and reliable in action, their major limiting factor was capacity, with most revolvers carrying just 6 rounds, with a relatively slow reload to boot. In the wake of arms development during World War II, many European forces were switching to 9mm semi-automatic weapons, with their double-stack magazines giving them a large capacity advantage over older designs. Earlier pistols such as the Browning High Power and Walther P38 proved their worth, and would pave the way for a new wave of modern, high-capacity semi-automatic pistols, such as the CZ75, 6-hour P226, Glock 17, and of course, the Beretta 92. These new service weapons were dubbed Wonder Nines, with a hint of sarcasm from those who preferred the more proven revolvers. But eventually the advantages of these new pistols started to erode any resistance. The original Beretta 92 design, intended for the Italian army and police, saw relatively limited production. It was later variants that would prove more popular. The 92S added a slide-mounted safety in accordance with some law enforcement's requirements, and the 92F and the later 92FS added further improvements, which would eventually lead to its adoption by the US Army. The US Armed Forces had long been aware of the advantages of a semi-automatic sidearm. After all, the venerable M1911 pistol had been in service since 1911. Although the classic Browning design was much loved, by 1980 the design was starting to show its age, and the US sought a replacement. One of the driving forces behind the change was the NATO Standardization Agreement. In order to simplify supply logistics, NATO forces would use these same calibers, and since 1962, 9x19mm Luger rounds had been elected as the pistol caliber of choice. A controversial point even today, the 9mm versus 45 caliber debate is a particularly divisive one. 45 ACP offers greater punch, but 9mm rounds are smaller, offering greater capacity, and have both lower recoil and higher velocity. While some lament the loss in stopping power, modern 9mm loads proved more than adequate for most needs. And in 1985, the Beretta 92F edged out the more expensive SIG P226 to be adopted as the US Army service pistol under the M9 designation. Reliable with its all-steel construction, able to weather battle conditions, and with generous magazine capacity, the Beretta is a thoroughbred workhorse. Its selection by the US Army has led to its inevitable inclusion in a whole host of modern military games. Often a default sidearm, it is a ubiquitous ally to the American M4. It's the go-to choice for those looking to play soldier, although in reality pistols are only issued to select roles: rear echelon troops, drivers, officers, etc. In games, pistols fill a curious niche. They are often intentionally weaker than most other weapons, with limited range and semi-automatic fire. In Counter-Strike, pistols are the cheapest option, and such weapons determine the outcome of the first round. But once the money rolls in, they're quickly ditched for automatic weapons. The one place they do excel is in reactivity. Fast switching and quick on target. True to reality, the true strength of a pistol is as a backup to your primary weapon. They are ignored by most in favour of their rifle, or even replaced with an enemy weapon. But for those with the reflexes to use it, a trusty sidearm is valuable. In almost every Call of Duty, the tutorial slips in the old adage: switching to your pistol is always faster than reloading. The Beretta is a large weapon as far as handguns go, and as a result, it has quite a formidable on-screen presence. Much of the weapon's popularity can be attributed to Hong Kong film director John Woo. He was a fan of the pistol's stout size and near-bottomless magazine, and gave it prime placement in many films, often wielded as a pair. It's the protagonist's weapon of choice in A Better Tomorrow, and the same goes for Inspector Tequila in Hard Boiled. These seminal action flicks have had considerable influence, and this heroic bloodshed has seeped into games inspired by cinema. It's certainly no coincidence that the Berettas come in pairs in Counter-Strike, but it's the Max Payne series that is perhaps the most explicit of examples, with Max imitating classic Woo gunfighting action with dual Berettas in all 3 installments. Of course, the most direct link is in John Woo's own game, Stranglehold, where Tequila reprises his role from Hard Boiled with a pair of the iconic pistols. A far cry from its military service, it seems the Beretta has a darker side. 2 guns, infinite ammo, and paired with a thirst for vengeance. So the Beretta is a weapon with a distinct yet subdued charm. It makes a bold statement, but is never brash. Its legacy might never live up to the M1911, but while it's cut for a different caliber, it shares many of the values of the classic Browning design. Just a regular handgun. No showing off, just showing up and getting the job done. The Beretta 92. Classic 1-9. Reliable and always on your side. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, farewell. Some weapons are so iconic, they don't even need a name. No maker, no model. All you need to make an impression is a twin 12 gauge. The double-barreled shotgun is a classic frontier weapon with an imposing profile. They've been around forever and are still widely used today. So why is this basic design so enduring? What makes them a common sight in video games? And do double the barrels mean double the fun? Shotguns are simple, versatile weapons that are capable of using a wide variety of ammunition. They have a long history, dating to the earliest days of firearms development, with roots lying in large caliber muzzle loaders such as the musket and blunderbuss. With the adoption of rifled barrels, shotguns diverged as a separate class of weapons, with their smoothbore barrels more suitable for firing multiple projectiles at once. From the tiny pellets of birdshot to the sheer stopping power of solid slugs, load versatility made shotguns ideal for hunting all kinds of quarry. The most common 12-gauge load is double-AWP buckshot. Typically 8 pellets, 0.33 inches in diameter. Such cartridges offer balanced performance against deer and human-sized targets alike. Prior to the invention of lever and pump-action weapons, most breech-loading shotguns were break-action, with hinged barrels that would expose the chambers for shell extraction and reloading. In the absence of a magazine, such weapons were single-shot, but the simple addition of another parallel barrel would double ready firepower. There have been triple and even quadruple barreled shotguns made, but the classic double barrel seems to offer the perfect blend of firepower against added weight and complexity. There exist 2 major configurations, with either horizontal or vertical barrel placement. The former are called side-by-sides, and the latter over and unders. Side-by-sides are perhaps the more classic design, evoking traditional coach guns, but the vertical arrangement offers a single side plane and more manageable recoil, albeit at the cost of greater internal complexity. In all its forms, the double-barreled shotgun has been present since the dawn of the American frontier, and equally since the emergence of first-person shooters. With distinctive appearance in spite of specific model, a generic profile made it an ideal fit for low-resolution rendition in earlier games, and one title in particular would have immense influence on what would follow. The Super Shotgun in Doom 2 is legendary. While the original shareware version had a shotgun, the retail sequel bumped it up a notch with the inclusion of a double-barreled option. The basic shotgun was good, but the Super Shotgun was better. It chewed through ammo like nothing else, but few opponents could stand up to a full frontal blast from both barrels. The gun tore through Hellspawn like tissue paper, and lodged its place in history as a firm favourite of many. The mid to late 90s saw a surge in FPS games, at the time known simply as Doom clones. These old-school shooters in the vein of Doom had a strict hierarchy of weapons, with your available arsenal slowly becoming more and more powerful as you progress. This makes the double barrel a particularly strong candidate for inclusion. If you need to double the damage, why not double the barrels? After Doom came Quake, this time with a more gothic theme. But the shotgun and super shotgun combo returned. It's almost a trademark of its games. Even today there are games in this old school vein, and it's not uncommon to see the close range punch of a twin-barreled favourite. Doom clones aside, there are plenty of historical reasons to include a double shotgun in a game, and they sometimes appear in a realistic military setting, although their use has been limited even since before World War II. Still, they do crop up from time to time, with double barrels appearing in the hands of civilian or partisan fighters and other irregular troops. However, far more widespread use can be found in the Old West. Bolstered by legends recounted in literature and cinema, it's the perfect place to find such a weapon. Its rustic charm rubs shoulders with revolvers and lever-action rifles. In a world of cowboys and stagecoach robberies, the double barrel is a natural fit for a frontier. The shotgun was a hugely important tool at this time. Far more than just a weapon, they were both a means to hunt for food and to defend a homestead. The twin barrels speak of a confident self-reliance, and such was the weapon's impact, it has lodged itself permanently into culture, intertwined with an emergent Americana. An inelegant weapon for a less civilized time, then, and one fictional setting is another popular place for such shotguns to shine. In fact, if there's one thing that guarantees the weapon's presence, it's the apocalypse. When civilization crumbles, the rugged shine. Spurred on by depictions in films like Mad Max, if you're going to tread the wasteland, you're going to want a reliable weapon at your side. the fall of order brings a frontier anew, and the double barrel often reprises its role as a tool for survival. With its youngest franchise, Rage, we come full circle. A post-apocalyptic game of the same lineage as Doom, the double-barreled shotgun is a familiar fit and an almost essential inclusion. Something about its presence just feels right, with dusty sun-bleached terrain, tribal disputes, and 2 barrels worth of buckshot. The double-barreled shotgun's impact transcends manufacturer and model. Its form factor alone is enough to conjure its iconic identity. Because of this, it often serves as a generic inclusion in games. And back to the very roots of modern shooters, it is an identifiable and enjoyable choice. Whether fired twice in succession, or both barrels simultaneously, the weapon is invariably powerful, devastating any foe caught in a close-range blast. And if 2 barrels aren't enough, sometimes you'll even come across a quad barrel. Although these reside outside the realm of practicality, 2 barrels is more than enough for most to wield. Power and reliable function through simplicity. The double-barreled shotgun. Lock, stock, and 2 smoking barrels. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, farewell. What does a battle rifle have in common with a microwave? They both go ping when they're done. The M1 Garand is a battle-proven American weapon that was ahead of its time. So what set this weapon apart? What are the advantages of a semi-automatic rifle? And is it pronounced Garand or Garand? The M1 Garand is named after its Canadian-American designer, John Garand. His interest in machinery and target shooting led to his position as a consulting engineer at the Springfield Armory. After the First World War, the US Army expressed an interest in developing a self-loading rifle for military use, to replace the earlier bolt-action M1903 Springfield rifle then currently in service. The Garand's major rival was the .276 Pedersen rifle, which used an experimental intermediate cartridge. This would permit a lighter self-loading weapon than would otherwise be possible with existing rifle calibers. However, later Garand prototypes were made to reliably function with the powerful .30-06 Springfield cartridge, and given the US military's existing stocks and unwillingness to switch caliber, this proved a decisive factor in the rifle selection as the M1 in 1936. One of the most notable features of the M1 Garand is its method of loading. Instead of a removable box magazine, cartridges are inserted as an 8-round en-bloc clip. This is retained within the non-removable internal magazine, and automatically ejected once all rounds are expended, launching skyward with a distinctive metallic ping. This quirk is well remembered, and is a symptom of a transitional design. The M1 Garand was ahead of its time. Its adoption just before the outbreak of World War II meant that there were enough rifles to arm the entire US military by the time they had entered the war. As the first ever successful semi-automatic rifle used in active military service, it gave the riflemen that wielded it a distinct advantage over an enemy equipped with bolt-action weapons. Faster follow-up shots meant a better ability to hit the enemy first, and a healthy supply chain meant that any wasted ammo was readily restocked. General George S. Patton described the M1 Garand as the greatest implement of battle ever devised. Within the context of World War II, he may have been right. After the war, self-loading rifles would become commonplace, with weapons like the AK-47, G3 and FAL replacing earlier bolt-action designs. The M1 Garand would be replaced by the M14 rifle, with the M14's removable 20-round magazine and select fire ability, making it more suitable for the second half of the 20th century. For a time, video games set during World War II were very, very popular. 1998 film Saving Private Ryan can shoulder much of the blame. Its gritty first-person perspective made for the perfect marriage with the emergent FPS genre. The Medal of Honor series marks a watershed in the history of cinematic games. A blend of classic FPS with a wartime setting, and a story provided by Steven Spielberg. The grand drama of conflict fits well with an immersive setting, allowing events of global impact to unfold before the player's eyes. In games, your gun is player agency made manifest, and for the duration of World War II, the M1 Garand was the Americans' weapon of choice. It was commonly seen throughout the surge of interest in historical military shooters, and it's also here that we see the birth of the blockbuster Call of Duty franchise. While COD made an effort to show other aspects of the war, with interwoven stories from 3 separate fronts, the Americans and their rifle still had prominent placement. As the popularity of wartime FPS subsided and modern military games took hold, the weapon has become a rarer sight. The M1 Garand's time in service was relatively short, so it's not often seen outside of a World War II setting. Alternate theatres were explored during the tail end of wartime shooters, with the Pacific War providing a refreshing angle away from the overdone European fronts. Banzai charges, traps, and ambush tactics were amongst the new threats you'd encounter, but the M1 Garand remained a constant. The campaigns in North Africa sometimes make an appearance too, with sandy environments and dust storms thrown into the mix amongst ferocious combat. Less common is the weapon's appearance in Vietnam. While there were still a few Garands in service, by this time frontline use was entirely replaced with the M14, and later the M16. In the few depictions within Vietnam, the M1 is either used in a specialist role or included as a throwback to an earlier era. Typically though, the M1 is a rifleman's weapon, an evolution of a long line of light infantry roles, steeped in tradition. Standard issue for the majority, the Garand was by far the most common weapon fielded by the US during World War II. This is reflected in games, and the M1 is usually the default weapon for players assuming the role of an American soldier. Sometimes the variety of weapons on offer is exaggerated, and dropping your rifle for a more exotic choice, or an enemy weapon, is encouraged more often than not. The M1 occupies a space in game balance between the faster-firing SMGs and slower bolt-action weapons, normally with the power to dispatch a foe with a single well-aimed bullet, but less reliably than with a slower-firing weapon. One universal trait of the Garand in games is its reload. Few depictions omit the real rifle's most distinctive characteristic. The iconic ping is a memorable and charming aspect of the weapon, a melodic tone in contrast to the cacophony of rifle fire. It might seem like a bad idea to have an empty weapon emit an audible cue, giving the enemy a chance to exploit your inability to fire, but in practical terms, it's never an issue. With cover fire from your squad and reloads taking just a couple of seconds, any downtime is minimal. Besides, the battlefield is a noisy place. You'd struggle to hear the ping over any sort of distance, over the deafening peal of gunshots. Another quirk in some games is the inability to reload a partly depleted magazine. The only way of restoring your full 8 rounds is to expend them, either towards the enemy or at nothing in particular. While it's true the clip won't eject until all rounds are expended, it is nonetheless possible to extract and refill the weapon through manual operation of the bolt. Some games do show this, but it does require a different animation and is a lengthier procedure, so it's easy to understand why it's sometimes omitted. Besides, by reloading early, you miss out on the ping. An unmistakable quirk of an extraordinary rifle. The M1 Garand is an important historical weapon, and one that helped shape the battles of World War II. Although its time in service was short, during its reign it was state-of-the-art, and gave those who wielded it a distinct advantage through superior firepower. The perfect blend of technology and availability. The M1 Garand. Combat proven. A rifleman's tradition. No finer implement of battle. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, farewell. Often, weapons become associated with the forces that wield them. Their role and alignment help shape their identity.
Breach clear.
Lawful good through and through. This is a gun for the good guys. The MP5. So, how did it earn its heroic status? What makes it a perfect fit for a counter-terror role? And what's the deal with the slap? The MP5 is a German weapon, manufactured by Heckler & Koch. H&K were founded in 1949, directly in the wake of World War II. The company took its name from two of its three co-founders, all of whom were former Mauser engineers, Alex Seidel, Edmund Heckler, and Theodor Koch. At first, they manufactured machine tools and precision metal parts, but in 1956, the West German government put out a tender for a new rifle for the Bundeswehr. H&K put forward the G3 design, based on a rifle designed by former Mauser engineers at CETMI, a Spanish technical institute. Their bid proved successful, and H&K developed a number of G3-derived designs to fit different roles, with the MP5 amongst them. Originally known as the HK54, work began on the new SMG in 1964. It fires the 9x19mm Parabellum round, the standard NATO pistol caliber. Original magazines were straight, but a slight revision in 1977 gave the weapon its distinctive and slightly curved 30-round mag. Like its parent G3 design, the MP5 has a roller-delayed blowback mechanism, a simplistic but effective enough action that has roots in German prototypes made near the end of the war. There are quite a few MP5 variants available. From the original HK54, also known as the MP5A1, the fixed stock MP5A2 and A4, retractable stock MP5A3, and sliding stock MP5A5. The MP5K, or Kurz, is a shortened variant, pared down into the smallest package possible. The MP5SD variants boast an integral suppressor for covert use, and there are larger caliber variants too, such as the MP510, which fires powerful 10mm auto rounds, and the MP540, which fires 40 Smith & Wesson. A flexible and configurable weapon then, and one that has found favour with a large number of police and special forces units. In 1980, one event in particular secured the MP5's iconic status: a siege on the Iranian embassy in London. 6 terrorists, 26 hostages, a densely populated urban location, and a live television feed. It was a very tense situation, with an awful lot on the line. On the 6th day of the siege, a hostage was killed. This prompted immediate action by the British Special Air Service, under the codename Operation Nimrod. 17 minutes after their first breach, 5 terrorists were killed, the final captured, and all remaining hostages were rescued. The mission's success reinforced the SAS's reputation as a deadly special operations force, and these events served as the perfect advertisement for the SMG they used. Its proven track record and suitability for the close-range fighting typical of urban terror operations make it a fitting choice for any counter-terror role, and a must-have inclusion for any games that depict such forces. The SAS's legendary live-fire exercises in the Killing House are depicted in the tutorial of Call of Duty 4, in which you drill the following missions plan with a plywood simulacrum. The MP5's presence here is true to life, and the game shows a recreation of the real training exercises that the SAS would have undertaken in preparation for the Embassy siege. The MP5 sees prime placement in the armories of tactical shooters then, and it's a flagship weapon of the Rainbow Six series. When it comes to tackling a terrorist threat, there's nothing better for the task. One quirk that crops up during the MP5's reload is the infamous HK slap, an open-handed tap on the cocking lever after inserting a fresh magazine, sending the bolt forward and chambering around. It might seem reckless to smack your weapon, but it's actually recommended procedure. A softer approach might not drive the bolt home properly. Besides, the MP5 is a working weapon, and one that can withstand a little roughhousing. The slap isn't unique to the MP5, but it is a cool move that has helped to bolster its iconic identity through fiction as well as fact. Its distinctive on-screen presence and association with heroic action make it a prominent choice in cinema. The weapon has turned up in hundreds of films, normally seen in the hands of the good guys, but sometimes revealing a more impetuous side. With notable appearances in Die Hard 2 and The Matrix, the weapon appears outside its normal counter-terror role in games inspired by classic action movies. Games like Max Payne and Modern Warfare 2 indulge a more brash side of the SMG, far from the tightly controlled discipline of well-trained special forces, and the MP5 can also employ spray and pray tactics. It might waste ammunition, but it looks good on screen, and more empty mags mean more stylish reloads, complete with the slap. Today, there are a number of more modern SMGs and personal defense weapons vying to replace the 50-year-old MP5 design. H&K themselves even offer two alternatives: the more modern and larger caliber UMP-45 and the armor-piercing power of the diminutive MP7. But the classic 9mm SMG still reigns supreme, well loved by those who wield it, and with ubiquitous use by police forces worldwide. A legendary submachine gun that earned its reputation through baptism by fire. Always cool under crisis, it's the perfect counter-terror weapon. The MP5. Confident. A force for order. Terrorists' bane.
Counter-terrorists win.
Thank you very much for watching. Iconic Arms will return. So until next time, farewell.